In modern discussions surrounding immigration, the concept of a visa is increasingly emphasized as a privilege rather than an inherent right. A visa is essentially an official document that allows foreign nationals to enter and stay in a host country subject to certain conditions. For the United Kingdom, the issuance of a visa is conditional upon the individual's alignment with the country's interests and regulations. This implies that visas are not automatically granted and can be revoked if the conditions are not met. The UK government maintains that it has the authority to enforce these conditions rigorously. This stance underlines the notion that holding a visa is a privilege that must be respected by adhering to the rules and expectations set by the host country. Failure to do so can lead to the revocation of this privilege, highlighting the conditional nature of the visa. The UK government's recent actions reflect its commitment to strictly enforcing visa conditions. In response to protests that began in October, there has been a noticeable increase in actions against those holding student visas. The government has adopted a more stringent approach, scrutinizing the activities of visa holders to ensure compliance with their intended purposes. For instance, individuals who come to the UK under the guise of pursuing academic studies, but then engage in activities deemed to promote hate or extremism, face the risk of having their visas revoked. This response underscores a broader strategy aimed at preventing the misuse of visas for activities that undermine public order and safety. The government's firm stance on this issue illustrates its intention to ensure that visas are used in accordance with the intended legal and ethical guidelines. The policy of visa revocation has sparked a significant debate between the UK government and various civil liberties groups. The government's stance is that revoking visas for individuals involved in promoting hate speech or extremism is a necessary measure to protect public safety. This policy has come under scrutiny, particularly in light of rising anti-Semitic incidents and violent protests related to the Israel-Hamas conflict. The government's approach is framed as a proactive measure to curb the spread of extremist ideologies and to safeguard its citizens from potential threats. By targeting individuals who are perceived to be inciting violence or hatred, the government aims to maintain social harmony and public safety. However, this policy has been met with criticism from civil liberties advocates who argue that it represents an overreach of governmental authority. These critics contend that the policy infringes upon fundamental democratic principles, especially the right to free speech. They assert that the government's actions could set a dangerous precedent where the criteria for visa revocation might be applied in a manner that suppresses legitimate dissenting voices. There is concern that the policy could lead to the suppression of unpopular or minority viewpoints, which are vital to the health of a democratic society. The debate thus centers on finding a balance between ensuring public safety and preserving the freedoms that are fundamental to democratic governance. The clash between the UK government's visa revocation policies and the concerns of civil liberties groups highlights a deep-seated disagreement about the limits of governmental power and individual rights. Proponents of the policy argue that it is a necessary tool for protecting citizens from extremist threats and hate speech. They emphasize that in the context of increasing anti-Semitism and other forms of extremism, it is crucial for the government to take decisive action to prevent the spread of harmful ideologies. From their perspective, revoking visas for those involved in such activities is a legitimate and necessary measure to maintain public order and security. In contrast, critics argue that the policy is overly broad and potentially harmful to democratic values. They point out that the definitions of hate speech and extremism used by the government are often vague and open to interpretation. This ambiguity can lead to arbitrary and unjust decisions, where individuals with minority opinions or unpopular views might be unfairly targeted. Critics also contend that the policy does not address the root causes of extremism and anti-Semitism, but rather provides a superficial solution. They advocate for a more comprehensive approach that includes education, community engagement, and interfaith dialogue as more effective means of addressing these complex issues. The debate reflects a broader concern about the impact of such policies on the fabric of democratic society. The discussion surrounding visa revocation and free speech is inherently complex, as it intersects with broader issues of extremism and public safety. Supporters of the visa revocation policy argue that it is essential to protect citizens from the adverse effects of hate speech and extremist activities. They highlight the increasing incidence of anti-Semitic acts and the sense of vulnerability felt within the Jewish community as justification for the policy. For these proponents, revoking visas is seen as a proactive measure to combat extremism and ensure that individuals who engage in violent or hateful behavior are not allowed to exploit the privileges granted by their visas. Critics of the policy, however, raise concerns about the government's approach to defining and addressing hate speech and extremism. They argue that the criteria used are often broad and subjective, which can lead to the suppression of legitimate political discourse and dissent. The fear is that such policies might be used to silence minority viewpoints rather than address genuine threats. Some critics also suggest that the visa revocation policy is a reactive measure that fails to tackle the underlying causes of extremism and anti-Semitism. They advocate for a more nuanced approach that includes preventive measures such as promoting education, fostering community engagement, and encouraging dialogue between different faiths and cultures. This perspective emphasizes the need for a comprehensive strategy that addresses the root causes of extremism rather than focusing solely on punitive measures. The ongoing debate over visa revocation and free speech carries significant implications for the UK's democratic institutions and political landscape. The outcome of this issue will likely shape how the country balances the need for security with the preservation of democratic freedoms. The policy of revoking visas for those involved in promoting hate speech or extremism raises important questions about the limits of government authority and the protection of individual rights. It challenges the UK to find a delicate balance between maintaining public safety and upholding the principles of free expression and democratic governance. As the debate unfolds, it will be essential for the UK to engage in thoughtful and nuanced discussions about the implications of its policies. This will require a careful consideration of the potential impact on democratic values and the need for effective solutions to address extremism and public safety. The challenge will be to create policies that not only address genuine threats, but also respect the fundamental freedoms that are central to a democratic society. The future of the UK's political and social landscape will be influenced by how effectively it navigates these complex issues and balances competing interests. The issue of visa revocation and free speech in the UK underscores the intricate balance between ensuring public safety and protecting democratic freedoms. The ongoing debate highlights the challenges of defining and enforcing acceptable limits on speech while safeguarding the rights of individuals. As the UK continues to grapple with these issues, it will need to find solutions that uphold both security and democratic principles. The outcome of this debate will have far-reaching consequences for the country's political and social future, emphasizing the importance of finding a nuanced and effective approach to these pressing challenges. The implementation of the UK's visa revocation policy is a multifaceted process involving several mechanisms, agencies, and procedures designed to ensure strict adherence to the country's immigration regulations. At the core of this policy is the role of the Home Office, which serves as the principal government department responsible for overseeing immigration and national security. The Home Office is tasked with setting the criteria for visa revocation and ensuring that these criteria are consistently applied across all cases. To enforce the policy, the Home Office collaborates closely with UK Visas and Immigration (UKVI), which handles the day-to-day management of visa applications and compliance. UKVI plays a crucial role in monitoring the activities of visa holders and flagging any instances of non-compliance. This monitoring is often carried out through routine checks, reports from educational institutions, and intelligence gathered from various sources. What are your thoughts on this drastic measure? Do you believe it will have a lasting impact on how protests are handled in the UK? If you found this analysis eye-opening, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth content on the latest news and trends. Also, drop a comment below with your opinions.